Spaghetti westerns had begun well before Sergio Leone. Germans and so forth wrote westerns, even though none of them had ever been to the American West. There was a kind of a European tradition. And the Italians came along, and so they started making these pictures, often using slightly broken down American stars, or stars like Clint, who were on the rise. It was a very unpretentious, I guess is the polite way of putting it, genre. I mean, it was mainly made for Europe. And I think Leone's were really the first to make any kind of impact in the United States. They were looked on askance because they so violated the long American tradition of how Western stories were told. It was one of the things that Clint once said to me about it. It's what he liked about them. They were breaking all the rules.
Leone is the only director of spaghetti westerns that made it in America. By the way, there were dozens. I produced a spaghetti western myself. There were dozens of them, but almost all of them never played in America. Only Leone pictures, because he was artful. He was very, very clever in the making of his movies. He made them feel like real, important pictures by the way he shot it and the kind of characters he used.
The westerns done by other directors at that time were cheap films. I was the one who started the Italian westerns, and my films were cheap too. The ones before Sergio Leone. So there was no outstanding Western director better than Sergio Leone at that time, and even later, because the Western genre was considered as something cheap, not worth doing it, while Sergio Leone loved them, and I loved the Western.
We were doing very small budget films. This wasn't the high budget Italian film. The first Fistful of Dollars was a $200,000 film, and that maybe a few dollars more than that, if you pardon the pun. But they were very shoestring. They had German money in it, and Spanish money, and Italian money. And those three entities were constantly arguing with themselves about who would pay what. They'd always be arguing or reneging on the deal and walking off the set. I mean, it was a great experience to look back on. But at the time, it was kind of funny. I mean, now it's very funny. I always thought at the time, this thing will either do really well or it won't do anything. Probably the latter. So I thought, this thing's going to really bomb out, but I'm going to get a trip to Italy and Spain. I've never been to either place. If it did something, if the dice came up 7 or 11, I'd be, it would be just a bonus deal.
We must remember that he always had a name in all three of these pictures. The Man with No Name was actually a marketing concept that somebody at United Artists came up with when they decided to bring out these three pictures in relatively close order. But in this picture, he's Blondie. Clint brought a lot of costume with him. Black jeans, which he found, just in a Levi's store somewhere. His gun belt was his rawhide gun belt. The cigars were bought near to Hollywood, across from the farmer's market, in point of fact. He wasn't a smoker, but when he did have to smoke one, he said they had a really foul taste. He said, put you in the right mood for the character. And he brought that sheepskin jacket that he wears under the serape. The serape was Sergio's. I think he bought that in Spain on the location, actually. But the sheepskin coat, which he wears quite a bit in all three of them, was Clint's addition to the costumery of this movie.
It was kind of all pieced together, and you never had duplicates and triplicates or anything in case something got lost, in case something got damaged. We had nothing. I had one hat. If I lost that hat, I was a goner. There was no way to match up to anything else. So what I did is I took my wardrobe home at night. I took it back to the hotel. I took the hat and the poncho, which we only have one of. I just kind of had to keep very, very careful of track of everything, and that's about it.
I was in California making another movie, and the agent said there's a Italian director who wants to make a Western, and he wants you to be in it. I said, well, how do Italians make Westerns? Oh, he said, yeah, spaghetti Western. I said, spaghetti Westerns sound like Hawaiian pizza. I never heard of it. Oh, he says, he'll make a good Western. He's made 2 others, A Fistful of Dollars and A Few Dollars More. So I met Leone, who was a big bear of a man. And he said, I want you to come to Italy to make the movie. He said, see a piece of my movie. And I saw the credits of one of his movies where his name appears and then a gun appears and shoots his name down. I thought, that's very interesting. It shows he has an ego, but he's willing to be shot down. So I said, yes, where do you want me? He said, I want you in Rome a month from now, and we're going to start making the movie. I arrived in Italy, and next thing I know, I'm on a horse being turned in by Clint Eastwood to get a reward for my capture because of a vicious bandit. And I had lines to learn, and I put on this costume, and there I was in the movie. And I was playing this character, Tuco.
Let me go! You play with a man who's tied up! Come back! Come back and fight! You bastard!
Eli is well, he's a very, very fine actor. I was always a great admirer of his prior to doing this film with him. And I mean, even afterwards, make it sound like afterward. But he was just a great performer and very, very versatile actor. But he always had a tremendous amount of energy, and he just enjoyed himself immensely. He enjoyed building the character and putting it together with my character, which was much more on the stoic side. Though I'd play my humor in more of a wry fashion. His was more I thought we made a pretty good combination.
You filthy bastard! Come here! I'll kill you! I'll kill you!
Such ingratitude after all the times I've saved your life.
Well, I enjoyed Clint because Clint didn't say much, but he had a great sense of observation and listening. And that's a great strength in movies. He doesn't seem to do much, but when you look up on the screen, there it is. And it's wonderful. We fly to Madrid, and we're going to shoot in the southern part of Spain in a place called Almeria. Lawrence of Arabia, they shot there. And there in southern Spain, you had the water, then you had desert, then you had mountains. So it could be very Western.
We were the only people in town that spoke English. No concierge, no serenas, as they call them there, and it spoke English. You're just a small hotel. Everything was Italian, or Spanish, rather. And people who spoke a little Spanish got by, and if you didn't, if you ordered a milkshake, you got a potato salad. So you had to learn really quick. Sergio didn't speak any English, and I didn't speak any Italian when I first went over there. He knew goodbye, and I knew arrivederci, and that's about it.
Clint, I don't know how he communicated, but I communicated with broken French. With Leone, he spoke pretty good French, and that's the way we communicated. But after a month of shooting this movie, 6 days a week, 12 to 14 hours a day, we learned to communicate. You remember the gun shop where I put the gun together? I said, Sergio, I don't know anything about guns. He said, just have fun. And what I admired about him is he let me go through the whole thing of taking a gun apart, putting it together. And I put things in like this, you know, and I shook the thing. I did all kinds of crazy things that I had no idea were authentic. Cut, he says, good, I like that, finish.
A good movie director comes to a set early in the morning and walks the scenes through that he's going to do that day. himself alone so he can think and concentrate. Then once he's got it, he relaxes somewhat. You know, the day is from 9 to 5, and that's it. It's not like the old days. He was so concentrated on what he wanted. I mean, there wasn't a moment of film that he printed that wasn't exactly what he wanted. His pictures are wonderful.
Not a lot of coverage. He sometimes would do a shot 3 or 4 times because they were so paranoid. In the early days, especially, not so much on The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, because that was a co-United Artists production and a fairly large budget. But in the early days, they'd do a couple takes because they figured the lab would screw up the first 2 or 3, or somebody would get scratched, or somebody would drop it. There was just all kind. It was a very, very haphazard crew.
Leone didn't do much directing. He knew what he wanted in his shot. He knew how to set it up. He had a wonderful cameraman named Tonino della Colli, a little man who was brilliant with a camera.
Sergio chose Tonino della Colli as cinematographer. He's undoubtedly one of the best cinematographers in Italy.
In Italy, the photographers are great. It's atavistic, you know, it dates back centuries. The talent these people have. I mean, when the Italians went into high fashion designing, they took it over. They're incredibly talented. Any church you go into in Naples, I mean, in Florence especially, or Rome, there's a masterpiece, a painting.
Hey, Pablo, don't you recognize me? It's me, Tuco.
On the set, the actor spoke the language he knew. There's a scene with my brother.
I don't know the right thing.
He would watch my lips. When I stopped speaking, then he would talk.
What about our parents?
Solo adesso ti ricordi di loro.
And I understood enough Italian. He did it in Italian, or French, or German. Whatever language they spoke, they spoke. They didn't care if there were extraneous noises. Like you say, oh, the camera is making a little noise. They didn't care about that, just as long as the picture was clear.
You'd be doing a scene, and in your eye line off of one side of the camera or another, you'd see a couple guys back there playing Frisbee or making motions or telling jokes, and you hear people talking, and it's very, very distracting. And I just kind of forged over it. It gave me a reason to concentrate that much more intently. They just weren't used to the quietness of a set where sound is a very important feature. I'd make up a lot of stuff anyway, and so would Eli. We'd just do the scenes and whatever the intent was, and then. But you did have to keep track of it because you're going to loop it later.
There's an actor who lived in Rome named Mickey Knox, who lived in Rome, and Mickey, they gave him the job of the dubbing.
I would sit at a small moviola and go over the film or each speech back and forth, and had to fit in what I adapted in English into the lips. With Eli and Clint, it was easier than the others because they only spoke English, and many times it was good enough. I spent a whole morning on one line, just 2 words. In Italian, there's a big close-up of a guard saying to prisoners of war from the South, and they're playing while they're torturing Eli. The music is supposed to drown out the screams. At one point, they start to cry, the musicians. The line in Italian is più forte, which means louder.
Più forte.
Well, I couldn't get it in. Più forte has 2 labials.
Più forte.
I was stuck on it until I came back from lunch, and I thought, wait a minute, I got it.
More feeling.
Knox's work was very important and very effective for this reason.
I don't give a goddamn what they do in Andersonville. While I'm in charge.
The sync must have been perfect. Otherwise, the American audience would look, there was no sync. And immediately the picture would be qualified as a poor picture.
You see, in this world, there's 2 kinds of people, my friend. Those with loaded guns, and those who dig. You dig.
The major problem that I've always had in translating and adapting scripts from Italian English is the humor. It's different. American humor is not like Italian humor in many, many cases. I had to find the American humor and fit it into the dialogue.
See you soon. Idiots. It's for you.
I didn't think I was funny in places. People quote to me one line I said all the time.
When you have to shoot, shoot, don't talk.
I didn't think it was funny. I think I was just shot a man, and I said, you wasted your time. I'm going to shoot you, that's all. But for some reason, it turned out oddly, and people took pleasure out of this man.
It's actually a truism of movies, especially action movies, that less dialogue is more and has more of an impact.
Why? Yeah. How? Yeah.
We're going for a ride.
Where?
Clint was always arguing with Sergio for less dialogue.
And you?
He thought that this guy should be really silent, not have any exposition whatsoever, keep his comments to almost fragmentary sentences.
That's right. $2,000.
Yeah.
What little dialogue Clint has tends to be very memorable. For example, in Good, Bad, and the Ugly, when he finally comments on the carnage of the big battle at the bridge,
Never seen so many men wasted so badly.
that really zings out at you because he has up to now made no comment about the stupidity of the whole conflict. He hasn't said a word, but when he finally does speak that line, it's very potent.
A couple steps back.
I think in Good, Bad, and Ugly, Clint's character is sort of mysteriously darker than he is in the others. For example, when he decides to break up his partnership with Eli, there's no particular motive for that. He just up and does it.
Adios.
You know, maybe there's some backstory we're not privy to, but, you know, it's a good scam they've got going. It could go on for a long time with it. And, it just doesn't make much sense. On the other hand, he's also in the later passages of the movie more humane than he's been in his previous movies, I think. He's going a little bit more toward humanity on the one hand, a little bit more toward a kind of enigmatic darkness on the other. There's a little bit more range in this character.